All right, hello everyone. It's Aaron Grange here. I was one of the Invictus Games track and field coaches. I'm here with one of my athletes, Bruce Matthews, and we're just going to ask him a few questions. You guys pose the questions here, and hopefully you can get some insight out of the interview. So, Bruce, why don't you tell everyone just a quick snapshot of who you are and why you're here?
I was medically released from the military. I joined the military in 1990, did 17 years in the military, was medically released in 2007 with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and also a lot of surgeries I had to go through. So they deemed me unfit to go overseas, so that's why they threw me out of the military, basically.
Sure. All right, so you mentioned PTSD as a part of your life. Do you want to give some of these students here, tell them what your experience is with PTSD?
It's hard to really summarize what it is. I'll get triggered, and a lot of times I don't know what it is. Could be a smell, could be a sound, different things will set me off. And a lot of times when I'm right there in the moment, I don't even know what set me off. So people will be asking me, why are you triggered? Why are you upset? And I don't know. And says, why don't you know? And I just don't know, and more people ask me, more it sets me off even more. And it's usually when it subsides down a couple days later, sometimes up to a week later, then I start thinking about the thing and kind of realize what happened, why it happened, and all that. So it makes life tricky. Like I go out and I don't know if I'll get set off that day or not. So it's always like you're apprehensive about going to do things. You go to places where you feel safe, and you try not to venture into places of the unknown because it kind of sets you off.
Okay. And what role has sport played in your life?
Sports have been instrumental. Since early on in my life, my parents had me in sports, and then through the military I played sports. So it was easy to adapt to sports afterwards with the Invictus Games, but it gives me an outlet. When I'm wound up, I find going to the gym, doing weights or some cardio, kind of lets off a lot of the steam and allows me to refresh myself and move forward with my day.
Sure. Being more specific to the games, how did you get involved with the games, and what events did you compete in, and basically how did you train or prepare for that?
At first, I didn't know about the games. It was my mom that reached out to me. She asked me why didn't I sign up for this, so I did some research with my wife, and we found out that this was something that was pretty interesting and we'd like to venture into it. So I applied. And I applied for, I did powerlifting, shot put, discus, and both indoor rowing events. And my training was roughly 4 to 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. It'd be either in the weight room doing weights, building up my strength for the powerlifting, cardio for the rowing, and then here with Aaron training for shot put and discus throughout the week as well.
Okay. So in terms of the Invictus Games, why did you compete in the Invictus Games, and what has it meant to you?
I looked at it as something, it was a challenge, and seeing all these other athletes with different injuries and get to share the stories and build a group of people, a support unit to help me moving forward after the games, I thought would be something I really needed. And then from there, just trying something new, like 4 of the events I've never done before in my life. So it was something of a challenge as well to learn those sports.
Cool. What is your perception of disability, or how has your perception of disability evolved or changed since you've experienced PTSD, and also since becoming part of the Invictus Games and interacting with the rest of the teammates there?
Before getting selected, I isolated a lot. I didn't come out much. I stayed more at home. I would go to the gym because I knew that gym, but pretty much I didn't do anything to get into the Invictus Games, meeting some people, being able to find like a support group, talk with them, realize I'm not the only one with my injuries, has allowed me to come out a lot more, to go out to ventures into other places. If I'm not too sure about certain things beforehand, I'll reach out to some of my teammates and talk to them about it.
The students indicated from watching the Invictus games that more and more servicemen and women are open to talking about mental illness. Do you think the ideas or the idea of mental illness has changed within the service community, serving retired military members, etc.? And what do you think has caused that change, if you think the change has happened?
I think it has changed in the veterans in the sense that through these games you notice that you're not the only one. Like living around where I live now, I didn't know anybody with PTSD. I didn't know that there was other people. And being this base here is more of a school base, less people being deployed, whereas I was based out of just north of Quebec City, where that's where all my support I had before was. So I didn't know anybody around here that suffered like I did. So so it's hard to reach out to people. But through the games, I met some people from this area, so now I have a support group. I find that still the active military people are apprehensive about coming forward with it because it pretty well signs the end of their career. As soon as you come forward with it, the military are, okay, we can't have you going back overseas, and they kind of have this saying, if you're undeployable, you're unemployable, so they started releasing people. So people were very weary still in the military about coming forward with it.
Cool. So in the past, sort of being masculine or sort of like the real man is incompatible with having a mental illness. Do you think this has changed? And specifically with the military, and do you think the Invictus Games has had an impact on that?
When I first had my PTSD, it was something nobody even talked about. It was they hadn't even labeled it really PTSD, and if you even mentioned it at work, it was you're pulled aside and said, you need to suck it up and move on. But nowadays, it's coming more. It's out there a lot more. Like the Invictus Games spoke of it in quite detail, and more activities like this. Bell has the mental awareness one. There's a bunch more getting out there. It's helping people be more aware of it, and I think we still need to do more awareness of it because there's no, like, people got a broken arm or leg, they have a cast on, but for mental illness, there's no bandage around your head, so people look at you and just assume there's nothing wrong with you.
Absolutely. How do you think the Invictus Games is different than the Paralympics or parasport in general?
Paralympics is more aimed at medaling and competing, and this athletes are dedicated so long to doing it. Invictus Games, yeah, it's fun winning the medals. I was fortunate to win some. However, for the main thing is to get people out of their homes, get them out of isolation, get them the support units, get them some groups of people that they can confide in. Also realize that you're not alone. There's more people out there. So I find the purpose is completely different. It's not all about the medals compared to Paralympics. It's more about the medals.
Absolutely. Process. Another question here. Why do you think Prince Harry chose sport as a way to help veterans?
A few years back, Prince Harry was in the States, and he was fortunate to go to a base, and they were doing it's called the Wounded Warriors Games, and Warriors Games. Anyways, so basically he got to see what the Americans were doing, and to see how these wounded soldiers were doing these sports, and it was helping their morale and all that. So Prince Harry decided he wanted to take this to a whole new level and get a bunch of countries involved in this. So that's how it came. It came from the Americans doing their events first, and then Prince Harry just took it to a whole new level, which has been amazing for everybody. Here's some of the questions you guys have asked Aaron you'd like to have answered. What was your experience of the recent games?
I found the Invictus Games an amazing experience. Not only was it a huge show for the athletes and for the spectators, but the stuff that happened behind the scenes, the stuff that the public doesn't see, I think that's the most important piece. The community, Bruce has discussed aspects of the community, reaching out to people. Just watching that, I'm sort of an outside person looking in to a certain degree, although I am somewhat involved. I can see how that's the most important part. People having a community with a similar situation or similar things to deal with allows people to evolve with that. And for me, that was the biggest thing that I took away from it. The games was just the showcase to allow that to happen. We started from the beginning saying that the most important day for us, for the community, if you will, is the first day after the games, which means that the games was just the spark. Everything that happens after that is truly what's important. As Bruce indicated, it's more about healing than, say, about winning those medals.
I'll just add quickly to that. Right at the hotel was a fine example. You had all the different athletes from different countries all hanging out in the lobby and interacting with one another. Even though there's language barriers and all that, there was no judgmental people. Everybody was just trying to find a way to communicate with each other, and it was a great time all the time. Would you like to see the Invictus Games change or grow in the future?
Absolutely. I think the fact that you can help people with something like physical activity, with sport, with competition, teamwork, group cohesion, I think that's a huge healing tool. I think it's somewhat underestimated, the power of that as a specific tool. So the more people that can be involved with it, the more that can benefit from it. I think it's as simple as that. It's, you know, a lot of people in my personal interactions with the athletes have said that the game saved their life. And I don't think people truly understand the depth of that comment, to know that there's some people that were on the edge and the games brought them back from the edge. The community, I would say, would probably be the biggest part of it. The games, again, just happened to be what got them going. I think that's the biggest benefit, and I hope more people can be involved. I hope they can continue it on as long as possible, but, you know, we'll see where that goes.
Just to add to that example of that, I was hospitalized for 2 months after a failed attempt on my life before the chance of applying for the Invictus Games. And from being bedridden for 2 months to where I am now is completely different, and it's thanks to the Invictus Games and through sports and all that. Has your perception of disability changed since becoming involved with the Invictus Games?
The thing that stands out to me the most, and the part I actually found the most interesting, was the mental health. I'm not an expert in mental health by any means, but my perception is that everybody has the capacity to have these issues. The difference is the life experiences. You know, Bruce, for example, has experienced things that not everybody has, and because of that, there's certain survival mechanisms, survival instincts that kick in, and you know, he's not different because of that. He just has these mechanisms upregulated and perhaps more sensitive. I mean, that's not a clinical response. That's just my personal opinion and observation of all the people that I worked with.
What accommodations do you make for your athletes, if any?
In terms of accommodations, there's some distinct ones that would exist. Somebody who has, say, an amputation, or they're in a wheelchair. There's just certain limits with the rules in terms of the wheelchair athletes. The amputation athletes, you know, you have to change how they interact with the ground for some of the ground-based sports, like coming out of the blocks for sprinting, or potentially how they throw in the throwing circle, because if an amputation or the leg there that they're using is their power leg, they can't grip and have control of the ground quite the same way. So there's small modifications, but honestly they're not that different. You would do the same thing for any other athlete based off of how their body functions. In terms of the accommodations for any of the athletes that I had with mental health issues, it's to the person, right? The individual has a personality. They have something that they're bringing to the table, and my job as a coach is to read that as best I can, and then give them something that I think is going to elicit the change. So in that sense, I accommodated them the exact same way that I would accommodate any other athlete. Bruce, yourself, any last words for them?
No, just needs to be more awareness to it. More we get it out into the public, more there'll be understanding. And I think the biggest thing for me moving forward was I got to stop looking at it. I used to look at it as an illness, and kind of illness, people kind of scare they're going to catch it. Whereas now I look at it more as an injury, and just by changing the term, it's helped me, and I know it's helped a lot of athletes stop looking at it as an illness and look at it more as an injury that we've gotten overseas. So.
Absolutely. All right, so thank you for your questions, and obviously thank you for your interest.